so that everyone knows. Got it. Thank you. Just so everyone knows, we have, I have a website, which is on will be on all of the subsequent pages, jcrcny.org/security grants. And, you know, these slides and the recording are up with more tips, and more resources are up on the website. So welcome. I'm glad to kind of be spreading the word. I proselytize for the nonprofit security grant program. And, you know, each year we've been very fortunate that the budget has grown, and therefore the number of organizations that are helped by the nonprofit security grant program also grows. So it's not an easy grant to get, but you know, if you stick with it, if you listen to what I say, and you know, it's possible to get $150,000 plus for your organization to secure it.
David, a quick question. We will be recording it, as I mentioned, and we will send you the link. But I wasn't sure if you wanted to share your slides or not.
Yes, I mean the slides are up on the website anyway.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
You said that this is going to be on your YouTube. How do I find your YouTube page?
I'll send you all the link after the webinar.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, Lucy was very good. She, you know, today I saw that she sent out my slides to everyone who attended yesterday, and an evaluation. So I'm anxious to see if I did okay. This is our standard disclaimer. Basically, I don't have any insider knowledge. I've just done this for enough years. You know, the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services runs this grant, and you know, I am annoying enough that they put out frequently asked questions today, and I read them, and I sent the director of grants an email correcting his FAQs. So I've been around, and he said, you're right. But, you know, you have to follow their rules. And that's what I try to give everyone. This slide deck has a table of contents telling you the different sections of the slide deck. And each of these, one second, let me get my, you know, each of these links are live, and they'll jump to a different place in the presentation. Okay. So what's the rule? How do you get this grant? Rule number one is to learn how to read and follow directions. And unfortunately, I find across the board that people don't read. To do this, you really have to do that. Rule number two is there's no rule number two. See rule number one. Okay. You know, if you're here, you probably have never received a grant before. What they do is they put their thumb on the scale, and FEMA wants new grantees to receive the grant. So, you know, that's good news. And it certainly is good news for you. In 2021 in New York, less than a third of the grantees were first-timers, people who never received a grant before. In 2022, it's over half are first-timers. That's because they give bonus points if you've never done this before. So this, you know, the other thing that we're getting is there are going to be more grants. than ever before. Your chances are really good if you stick with this. So what's the first thing is this grant is due in 29 days. That's why, Lucy, I bugged you. Let's get this on the schedule, because there's a lot to do in those 29 days. The most important thing is DHSES's request for applications. All of these links are live, and last we checked, they really worked. Here's a lot of tips, but the grant is due by 5 p.m. on the 20th, and they turn, at 5:01, they turn off the system. So there's no such thing as the dog ate my homework. You really have to do, get it in on time. Now, this year, Congress appropriated $305 million nationally for this grant, split evenly between a program that's for urban areas and a program for the rest of the country. Fortunately for everyone here that I know of, everyone here is in New York City, Long Island, or Westchester, and you're all part of the urban areas program. That's really good for us because there are a lot more urban area grants, because Homeland Security feels that urban areas are more likely to be at risk. So this is good news. Again, the finger on the scale, everyone here is likely to be a winner. Are you eligible? If you're a house of worship. Now, I get this question all the time. Are we, you have to be a 501c3 organization. So people say, well, am I a 501c3 organization? And the answer is houses of worship are automatically recognized as 501c3 organizations. You do not need an IRS letter. What you need, and you're going to need, is your certificate of incorporation in New York State as a religious corporation. You have that, you're home free on that issue. So basically, I should have done a survey on this, but most of us have a single site. In other words, we have one church, one place where we meet. If you have multiple sites, so if you have a church or a mosque and a school that have different addresses, you can apply for 2 grants. So you could get 300,000. What I suggest is, if you think you have multiple sites, get in contact with me. We'll try to parse it out so it works. But you can get grants for up to 3 sites or $450,000. So, this is a grant of opportunity here. But as I said, it's complex. And, they want, I sometimes think that New York State wants to drive us crazy. So there are 2 systems that you're going to have to use. Number one, the people are in, you're going to have to use Grants Gateway to pre-qualify. That's a weird term, but the bottom line is you have to be pre-qualified, or you will not be you will not get a grant. Simply, you're just disqualified for the grant system. More on that in a minute. There's a second independent internet application, which is called eGrants. The eGrant system is what you use to submit your applications. I know we'll get back to both of these, but everyone here understand that there are two systems and never the twain shall meet. Pre-qualification. The first step is to fill out the registration form for administrators. All of these links are live, so you can go right to them. And on my website, there's even a 6-minute video that kind of explains this in more detail. You're going to have to, what you need to do is to know where your articles of incorporation are and your bylaws, and a number of other organizational documents. You also have to, they want you to have a whistleblower policy and things like that. Now, how many churches here have a whistleblower policy? Probably none. But, technically New York State law requires every nonprofit in New York State to have a whistleblower policy. So here I have CSI FAQs. Those are on the document vault. Go there. When it says you need a whistleblower policy, I have a sample whistleblower policy. I have, you're going to need a mission statement. We have help on how to get the mission statement. All those kind of things are you're going to need. And grants management is, has a ton of help documents. And if you call their number, which is in this slide deck at the end, they answer questions. They really do answer the phone during the day, and they'll answer your questions, but start tomorrow, because I haven't heard of anyone who completes this on the first go round. They're going to say, you missed this. I need some more information on that. They will do everything possible to try to get you in under the wire. I like two years ago, there was a church that, came to my attention the morning of the deadline. And I called them up and I said, here are all the documents. And they made sure that the church was pre-qualified, because the church had everything else ready. So,
David, there was a question from someone who said they submitted all their pre-qualification documents in January, haven't heard. Is there an expected turnaround time for this?
Yeah, January's too long. What I would do, and at the end of this presentation, there's a phone line, and tell people that you did it. What often people do is they filled out the registration form and they didn't do the second phase. So try using the phone number, and if the phone number doesn't, if it's not logical, let me know. I have an email address, CSI questions at the end, and just send that to send me a question and I'll see if I can intervene. It's not that I have magical powers, but they know that I've been around for a few years, and I try to dispense good, accurate information. So, if I have a question, they usually pay attention. You're also going to need something called a unique entity identifier. Did you know that these words were in anyone's vocabulary? It's essentially you need a number. You're not going to need it by April 20th because I doubt if you'll get it by now. But if you're lucky enough to win, you're going to have to get this. Okay, now let's get back down to brass tacks in terms of the grant. What you should be thinking about, again, tomorrow, because we only have 29 days to go, is your vulnerability assessment. You have to convince the judges that you know what the threats that your institution faces, and you can figure out how to mitigate those threats, how to downgrade those threats, and make sure that your people are safe. And you do that with a document called the vulnerability assessment. Now, you need, remember I said if you have 2 sites, you're going to need 2 vulnerability assessments. The vulnerability assessment should have your physical address on it, no PO box. You have to make sure that each and every project, if you say you need, and we'll get more into this in a couple minutes, if you say you can have cameras, you have to have a vulnerability that you cannot monitor activities outside your building. You cannot adequately identify people coming into your building. So you have to have a security vulnerability for every request, and it should be current. So how do you do this? And it's getting late. Here's a bunch of options. If you can get to your local NYPD precinct and ask for a crime prevention survey right now, that's acceptable. There's other kinds of options here. It may be too late to do. What I would recommend is Homeland Security, one of the agencies within the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, has a Houses of Worship Security Self-Assessment Tool. It's really terrific. I would say go with it. And here's some other options. I would be looking at this document right here to look at what your common vulnerabilities are. I bet with a lot of our facilities, the doors aren't good. If you took a hammer, you could easily break a window and come in and do vandalism. You know, forget about theft. This is a counterterrorism grant, but you could vandalize the facility or undertake an attack. So what I would do is, 1 in 5 are the 2 documents that I would get to, tomorrow and start thinking this through. Here's a sample of a page. I'm sorry, I can't make this bigger, but, for example, they ask you simple questions. Are doors to the facility closed during services? That's something that, you should think about, because people, as we said yesterday in our active threat training, is no unauthorized people should be able to come into your building. That doesn't mean that you keep everyone out, in an unfriendly manner. You have to do it in a friendly manner, but have it. This helps you diagnose what you need to do to make give you a more secure facility. Now, I said there's $150,000 available. what's available, access controls, bollards, blast resistant doors, windows, etc. That we find, that's usually in the city. That's what I want to do first. I want all of the external doors to be able to withstand an attack by a determined adversary. So if your ushers can lock the door, they can make sure that the people inside are safe. So your windows, someone shouldn't just be able to break the windows. There are options. You can pay for contracted security for the life of the grant. You can get CCTV and management and administration. There's some things that you can't do. It's not politically correct to do facial recognition software, so you can't do it. But this is what's allowable and unallowable. Okay. Contracted security, it means that you can't use your own employees, pay for your own employees under this grant. You have to go to an outside vendor and hire outside security people. That generally is a good idea because that kind of transfers some of the liability away from your organization. And there's some other rules here. I won't go into the details of the rules. If you want contracted security, here are the rules. And basically all you have to do, you have to, again, have a vulnerability that says that you have insufficient monitoring and screening at your door. And then you're going to say, oh, well, how do we solve that? We solve that with having security guards there. So, everything has to tie together. You can do cybersecurity. In other words, you can have software as a service that, I think includes backups, remote authentication. I'm not going to go into these because a lot of you don't know what any of these mean. If you have a computer system in your house of worship, go to the smart person who set it up and have them go over this list and say, hey, we really need that.
Sorry, David, a question for those congregations who are putting their hard copies of wedding certificates and all of that, trying to put that online. Could you use this software and to do double duty for that kind of stuff?
You could have a backup system. It pays for, remember, this is a security system. So you scan something and you have cloud backup. That's fine. But, I would look for some other things because, document retention, to use, use Microsoft or Google is so inexpensive. Google, you can get a lot of storage for free. So, is it good? Yes. Are they going to pay for a system that, someone from the outside can look up their wedding certificate? No. This isn't a grant. People are all, there are grant reps that will, come to you and ask you to do, and ask, what are you doing with the money? And they have to approve a reimbursement. So it's a good idea, if you have an idea, to go to your program rep and ask, hey, this is what I plan to do. Will you approve it? And people, they will say yay or nay. and it's usually yay. So you can do all kinds of planning for this. You can pay for someone to run training or drills and exercises. And you can pay for up to 5% of the grant, or $7,500 can be used to pay for the administration of the grant. That can't be to pay for your book, part of your bookkeeper's salary. It has to be on overtime, or an outside person. Okay, now a philosophical question. As I say, this is not a trivial grant. You're going to have a lot of, if you're lucky enough to get the money, it's challenging to spend it. And so simplify as much as possible. And remember, I had a long list of what's of your options, to go and do backups, just to do your wedding certificates, backup systems. You're going to have to go out and get bids. And you're going to have to apply for reimbursement. And you're going to have to manage the bid and all of those kind of things. So what we always say is don't bite off more than you can chew. Get what you really need. And really, this is a grant that, when we started this many years ago, we didn't know if this would fly. At this point, it's really well established. Not only, is there a grant due April 20th, but Congress has already put this in the next budget, even though they haven't agreed on the budget. Senate has a big increase in this grant. The House is getting any sort of budget out of the House is a different story, but I'm not going to be political here. So essentially, focus on what you really need. If you only spend $100,000 this year, there's going to be some state money that's available also, and NYS will tell you about it. There's going to be, and there'll be a grant next year. Start thinking about a multi-year program to improve the security of your house of worship. Now, the core application form is called the investment justification. Again, words that we've never heard before. These are governmental words. And, click here to download it. Here's some instructions, because people, again, nothing simple. It's a PDF, but it doesn't easily open. Here are the instructions on how to do it if you have trouble.
David,
Okay.
there's a question about whether or not, if you've already spent money on security infrastructure, can you add that to the grant as a reimbursement?
No. This could only, you can only be reimbursed for expenses made during the life of the contract. So, this is another little quirk of the program. You're going to need to, you will not be able to access your money by the time you have to jump through all the governmental hoops necessary to get your $150,000. It will be January or February of 2024. So at that point, you have 3 years to spend your grant. You will only be reimbursed for approved expenditures during those 3 years after you've signed your contract. Does that make sense to everyone? So getting back to the investment justification, again, you have to have an investment justification, which is known in the trade as an IJ, because everything has to have an acronym. You must occupy the location at the time of the application. And I get to, it's another question that I get all the time. We have, we're building a new site. Can we use the money to install cameras at the new site? Sorry, the answer is no. Your investment justification has to summarize your mission statement, your vulnerability assessment, everything into one document, and you have to be able to tell a story that makes sense to the judges. You have to explain to the judges that you understand the threat, you understand why you're vulnerable, and you understand how to mitigate those vulnerabilities. And finally, you have enough managerial ability to really get this grant done. And just remember that this is the only document that you get that gets submitted to Washington. And there are judges here in New York that do one round of judging, and then there's a 2 rounds of judging in Washington. Okay. The investment justification is scored. Someone asked me, is this first come, first served? No. You need the basic score, and I'll get into some of the quirks later, but essentially a perfect score is 40 points based on the investment justification. 70% is to convince them that you know about the risk and how to mitigate that risk. And 30% is how do you know how to implement this grant? Everyone got that? Now, let's get to the form itself.
David, another question.
Sure.
Someone said that they're worshiping out of a New York City school building. And the question is around, can they pay the Department of Education safety officers as part of this grant?
Wonderful question. And the answer is, I don't know. And that's never come up. Okay, so we're talking about contracted security. So and remember that New York State requires you to bid. So, and now it may be that you only can use New York City school safety officers in a New York City school. There may be a rule to that effect. That means you can't bid, the answer would be no. Now, I have a question right now that I'm sending to Albany. New York City police have something called the paid detail unit. Now, that's a terrific option that, you can contract for an off-duty officer to show up at your house of worship and for about $45 an hour. And, they're in uniform, they have a radio. And they have to check in with the local precinct. So, it's really a great program. And there's a question now, I'm trying to convince them that it's the same as contracted security. Because, it's the best way to go. But, we'll see how, what happens here. Sorry, it's not, that's not clear cut. And, again, you also have to talk about, a vulnerability. If you already are paying for school safety officers, what's the vulnerability? Lucy, you look confused. I didn't,
No. I'm not. I'm just trying to follow the questions in the chat.
oh, okay. You know, it's a little bit different. You know, again, what do you want in a school? Someone screening who's coming into the school. If you already have a school safety officer there screening, there's no vulnerability. This is to bridge the gap between your vulnerabilities and having a safe building. Okay. Here's the beginning of the form. Question is, do you own your building or do you lease or rent? Any of them are good. Just, you know, these are drop-down menus and you just answer yes or no, you know, own, lease, or rent. Now, I was, you know, thinking, Lucy, that you were going to ask, oh, we want to install this in a public school building. So there's a question, if you're leasing or renting, do you have the owner's permission to make the proposed security enhancements? Now, a New York City public school would never let you, you know, install 3 more CCTV cameras or whatever. So you would, you know, and again, if you're just renting a storefront, it's probably pretty easy to, the owner, you know, wants that kind of upgrade. So, you know, the question is, you have to know that you can get permission. And then are you actually functioning out of the location listed? So, you know, those are really simple. You don't have to think about that. Now, basically, you know, the question is, are there 2 nonprofits working out of your building? Let's say that, you know, you're a church and you have a food program operating out of the basement of your church. The food program is independent. Unfortunately, you can't both apply for a grant, 2 grants. In other words, you can't get $300,000 for the building just because there are 2 organizations operating there. You need to do your mission statement, and your mission statement should explain, you know, something very simple. You know, we are a church bringing together adherents of the Presbyterian faith, meeting together to praise God, and you know, whatever it is, you know, you just put it down there. And they want you to upload a copy of your mission statement separately. It's one of the requirements. And ideally, it should be on letterhead, they say. Then, what is your primary organization type? This is really simple. You're either spiritual or religious. They're both the same option. Choose that. I'll get into the, you know, why in a second. But you're ideology-based, spiritual, or religious.
Another question, David. Someone has an existing long-term security contract. Would they have to stop that contract before submitting the grant to be able to request funds for contracted security?
Short answer is maybe. You know, all of this, you know, you're dealing with government. So this must be bid. And you have to come up with something that's called the bid matrix. Why am I choosing this company, you know, this company? You can be choosing for a number of reasons. You know, they have a great reputation. They have great references. You can have in your bid matrix knowledge of our congregation and our our facility, and you can say that that's a third of the grant. You know, their price is another third, and then a third. You know, the last third could be references or something like that. Now, it is likely that your existing company would have knowledge of your building more than other people, other firms, but it's, you know, it's not a guarantee, and you have to work with your program rep to make sure that all of these things work. I have seen people, excuse me, maintain their security guard company. But again, if you're paying currently $60 an hour, and someone comes in with an equivalent bid for 30, your program rep will, you know, say, well, why did you choose this the $60 spread rather than the $30 spread? And you can say butter tastes better. But, you know, that's another that's the answer to your question. Okay, they ask you primary, your function and primary affiliation. Your function is probably a house of worship, and you don't have to go further than that. And virtually everyone I saw on the list is Christian. I did see Sikh, United Sikh. So you just choose what's appropriate to what's appropriate, and you move forward. Okay. So here's the next section. You know, is the organization you know, eligible under the IRC to receive NSGP funds? That's a question. Are you a church? And the answer is yes. A church or a temple or whatever. Do you have remember I said that unique entity ID? The answer will probably be no, and you'll need one if you win a grant before they give you any money. Are you physically located in an urban areas designated area? The answer is yes, if you're in New York City, Long Island, or Westchester. And then there's a question, the total amount of federal funding requested. Ignore that because it's automatically calculated from somewhere else in the form. But they have to put it there to make you crazy. Okay, now your background information. Symbolic value. Now, your symbolic value may be the largest Presbyterian church. Or let's go, you know, First Presbyterian. You're one of the oldest Presbyterian churches in the New York area. That's a symbolic value. I know from yesterday that people come from the 5 boroughs to attend your church. So, you know, let them know how you are either a highly recognized national or historical institution, or a significant institution within the community. So do not leave this blank. If it's blank, you get 0 points. If you do something there, you're at least going to get partial credit. Are you going to be the same as St. Patrick's Cathedral as a symbolic site? Probably not. But you know, if you get 4 out of the 5 points, you're doing really well. Now, they're asking you if you have any role in prevention, protection, response, or recovery from an attack. Well, an example, you're on the NYS How Alert system, that you go to NYS seminars, you've taken NYS continuity, continuity of operations courses. You've been trained in of mental health first aid. Those are all good options. Same thing, even better, NYS plus Red Cross. Many of the denominations have disaster response organizations. If you send volunteers to the disaster response organizations, let them know. And then, so, this is a question of, there was someone yesterday who goes to the 79th Precinct Council, community precinct council every month. That's great. That's a great answer. And you answer the questions in this way, you get the 5 out of the 40 points. And, you're I used to say cooking with gas, but you can't say that anymore. Okay, now, here we go with risk. Risk is the potential for an adverse outcome as assessed by a function of hazards or threats, assets, and their vulnerabilities and consequences. So risk is equal to threat plus vulnerability plus consequence. And the whole purpose of this exercise is identify the threats and figure out how to mitigate them so that you address the consequences. Okay, now, I noticed last year that a lot of people lost some points here. So I went back to the FEMA Comprehensive Preparedness Guide. And I kind of did my homework and said, okay, what am I missing? And what you want to do is to be able to explain what are the likely terrorist or extremist-based threats. Our session yesterday was on active shooters or armed assaults, sharp-edged weapons, cyber attack, explosives. I added to this list from the textbook, vandalism, arson, vehicle ramming, because those are things that we have to worry about. And you have to know that know that this is what you kind of are thinking about. What are if I want to protect my organization, my people, my building, how do I do that? And what do I do first? I'm not looking for an improvised nuclear attack. That's a low, that's a low likelihood event. Okay, now, here's the question and risk. In considering a threat, please describe the identification and substantiation of specific threats or attacks. Now, the first thing that you should think about is what has happened to you that makes you aware of a threat. So, yesterday was Tuesday. So it's during our session. There were phone threats phoned into the courthouse and police headquarters in New York City. Now, have you had bomb threats? Have you had people calling up saying nasty things about your church? you've reported it to the police. That's what, that's the first thing that you can use. And, what happened, locally and what happened worldwide using national or regional threat assessments cite specific threats at closely related or similar or nearby facilities. So let's go into that a little bit. Here's an example. This one we were involved in, that, we employ intel analysts at CSI, and through our intelligence gathering, we found out that there were two people who were saying that they were going to go to a synagogue on the west side and shoot it up. Well, we saw that. We gave it to NYPD and FBI. And, this was back in November. And they ended up arresting the people at 11:30 that night at Penn Station. So, that's a threat. Here, we have a Taiwanese California church that had a shooting last year. So here it says, and you can use this kind of language because it's from the National Terrorism Advisory. Targets of potential violence include public gathering, faith-based institution, LGBTQ+, and community schools, racial and religious minorities, government facilities and personnel, critical infrastructure, the media, and perceived ideological opponents. Well, I think that all of us win here somewhere in this list, whether we're religious minorities or we're faith-based institutions. All of us are there, and you kind of bring out what happened. Another example, this is from the NYPD Weekly Terrorism Brief. White supremacist extremists have targeted mosques, synagogues, and majority Black churches in the United States, Canada, Germany, and New Zealand, among others, in recent years. Did this happen in 2021? There was a defendant who admitted he attempted to set the Darul Arqam Mosque in California on fire. Then he went to a synagogue. So these are examples of closely related organizations, and you have to kind of draw a connection. Well, we're a Sikh temple, and therefore we're a religious minority. We've had threatening phone calls or emails or Facebook posts, and therefore we know that there are people out there who may threaten a violent attack. 21, 22, 23, all kinds of statues, Roman Catholic statues, were broken. Okay. So then, and that's the threat section. Now let's go on to, and the threat section's 5 points. Let's go on to another 5 points for vulnerability. Vulnerability is a physical feature or organizational attribute that makes you open to exploitation or susceptible to a given hazard. All well and good. So the question is, you take your vulnerability assessment that you did yourself and you say, oh, our doors don't lock well. And by the way, someone could kick them in a second. That's a gap that can be exploited. So, lack of or weak physical protection measures. We don't have contracted security. We don't have CCTV. lack of adequate access control, insufficient screening, lack of hardware to support sound security policies. All of these are examples of language that works. You don't have an active shooter plan. Well, you got all the tools yesterday for those of you who attended, but if you wanted to have someone write a plan, you could say, I need $1,000 to have someone write a plan for me.
Just a reminder to folks, it's 6 o'clock, so we are going to run over. The presentation, David's presentation, is available on the JCRC website. I put the web link in the chat, and we will record this, post it on our YouTube, and I'll send that link out if you have to go. I encourage you not to, but if you need to, we of course understand.
Okay. I will speed up a little bit. Here's some sample vulnerability language that you could use in your investment justification. There are magic words. You want to use your grant to protect against threats and mitigate vulnerabilities. Those are the kind of words they love. They want interdiction and disruption. Yay! Your access control, your upgraded doors and windows, magic words, and this is it. You want to delay, divert, intercept, halt, apprehend, or secure threats, anyone threatening your organization. Screening, search, and you want metal detectors or mail screening devices that help with screening, search, and detection. Physical protection, protective measures. Again, the magic words, use them. And on-scene security is a way that you talk about contracted security. Consequences. There are 4 kinds of consequences. They want to see all 4 to get your 5 points. In any event, someone, you think about what happened today in Denver. There are human consequences, and there was a school shooting in East Denver. There are human consequences. People are killed and injured. There are economic consequences. What happens to, there's damage to the building. There's consequences to your mission. In other words, will people come to your church, which is traditionally viewed as a place of safety and peace? And if there's a shooting and God forbid in that sphere, and psychological consequences. In other words, people are traumatized, and you don't want your congregation to be traumatized. You want to use all 4 of those examples. Now, we talked about risk being threat, vulnerability, and finally, and finally consequences. Now, how do you fix that? How do you mitigate it? And again, everything should be clearly and effectively focused on the prevention and protection against the risk of terrorist or other extremist attacks. And this is an example of now what they do is they're asking you to do a bunch of things. They want to, for each activity and investment, include the quantity, estimated hourly rate or estimated price, and the proposed usage. Identify the vulnerability that it addresses and detail the costs. So this goes back to my reading. If you didn't read it, you wouldn't know, fencing. I want to put up fencing. You have to relate it back to the vulnerability on the here I have to address vulnerability and prevent or delay, those are magic words, the breaching along the west side of the facility. So you have a vulnerability that on the west side of your facility can easily be an attacker could enter the west side of your facilities. This fixes it. It's a physical protective measure of 240 feet, which I explain, and it's, we need 240 feet of fence. Again, cameras to increase screening capability and address inability to monitor the exterior of our facility and detect suspicious activity. So that's assuming you have a vulnerability that says that you can't monitor the exterior of your facility and detect suspicious activity. So that kind of clearly relates one to another. What I like to do is to really use numbers and number your vulnerabilities, list all the vulnerabilities or all the major vulnerabilities, because what that does, once it's in the investment justification, if you later have to switch things around, they'll allow you to switch to another thing in the vulnerability assessment, even if you didn't ask for it in facility hardening. You decide, oh, I don't need cameras as much this year. I'd rather put more into fencing. Okay, and then they ask you the same thing again. You have to tell them what you're getting, and there's a drop-down list. So, 14 SW01 light is lighting, exterior lighting. So, the vulnerability to be addressed is dangerous parking lot. In the evening, people can lurk, whatever. And then the estimated funding. This is really record keeping for them, so that they can track. Now we move from what you want and why you want it to a justification.
Sorry, David,
Really,
we're not hearing you.
a grant of this magnitude. After all, the government is giving you. Oh, 1 second. I want to know you. I'm sorry. You know what happened is I took this from something I already had I didn't eliminate one of my audio narrations from another edition that I upgraded. So I thought someone was asking me a question. Okay, sorry. Okay, this is administration. First of all, you have to convince them that you know what you have to do, what, that you have a plan. And these are called milestones. These are the steps that you need to do. So this used to be all blank, and everyone was forgetting to that you need to do an environmental and historical preservation review. In other words, First Presbyterian is going to have a nightmare because you're a landmark, I assume. So they're going to have to check with the Landmarks Preservation Commission if you put cameras there, is that going to ruin the whole building? So, but it'll take more time. It doesn't mean it won't be done. It just means it takes more time. So what I basically said here, is your start date is October 2023, and figure it's going to take 4 months, 3-4 months. It's going to take First Presbyterian probably 6 months. Just that's what happens. Now, what you want to do is to let them know that you complete all the elements and sign a contract. So you're going to do that October through February. And then what you're going to have to do is create a, say, here I have it, signing a contract, creating bid documents, soliciting bids, evaluating and awarding bids, search for a contractor in compliance with New York State procurement rules, because remember I said this is complicated, and don't bite off more than you can chew. And so there are 10 steps here. I keep saying use all 10 steps. And you'll probably get, and remember that you cannot install new locks until you have new doors, if you're changing the doors. So the order is important.
There's a question, David, from Tyra. Tyra, did you have your hand up?
Yes. One quick question, and maybe I missed it. So say for instance, we our particular church is awarded the funding. At any point, if the scope of the project that we originally submitted changes, will they go back and reallocate the funding to cover the change in the scope of our project?
Okay. So first of all, you're giving them you're guessing at prices. So let's say that you want to put in 15 cameras in the church, in the exterior, interior, whatever. So you need, and you say, you've spoken to me and I said, a good estimate cost is $2,500 per camera. That includes the cabling, to do it in a professional manner. So then you can go out and bid, and people, the kind of cameras you want end up costing $3,000 a camera. So they're going to say, well, okay, so you were going to do training. I don't want to do training. I want to rearrange things. They're going to have to go to FEMA in Washington and say, okay, this is what they want to do. This is how they justify it. It costs more. Or they want to do 10 cameras. And you do what's called an IJ modification. Another one of those crazy words. Or if you really want to be an insider, an IJ mod. So that's, and we help people do that all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, remember I said, list all your vulnerabilities? If you list all your vulnerabilities, it could be that you figure out, when you have more than 29 days, that you'd rather do A rather than B. As long as A is listed in their vulnerabilities, they'll let you think about that. And the question is, and this is, there are pages of this in the request for applications. They explain this. The reason is that they have to conclude you have a winning, if you win a grant, you have a winning application, and would this other application win? So, the answer is yes, it's possible, but it's not guaranteed.
I have a question. If you are, if you have a terrific application, clearly high vulnerabilities, but you have a congregation size of 100 versus 1,500, are you less likely to win the grant?
If you have a terrific application, you're just as likely to win. So how do they do this? the state is asked within, let's say you get 37 points, which is a terrific application. The state is asked, and I expect the state to get 650 applications this year, statewide. So they're asked to take those 650 applications, look at who got 37, and then rank order the people within who got 37s. Now, I would say, and I've spoken to other judges who agree, that I would give, if two organizations that got 37, I would give the 1,500, a congregation of 1,500 the grant, because I'm protecting 1,500 congregants, before I would give the 15. But generally, if you get a 40, 38, 39, if you are a first timer and you get extra points, you're gonna, you will get a grant, whether you're 15 or 1,500. Does that answer it or make you more confused? Okay. So then they ask about the measurable outputs and outcomes. Measurable means they like numbers or words that sound like numbers. For example, all of our primary and secondary doors, or the vast majority, or you can say, 15 out of the 17 primary and secondary doors will withstand an assault by a determined intruder. That's the kind of thing you want to be very specific. You want to say all of our windows within 18 feet of the ground will be filmed with blast mitigation film and anchored so that injuries to inhabitants by flying glass is minimized. So all, give them, that means I said 18 feet because you're not going to film your second floor windows because they're less likely to be affected. And then they like measurable outcomes. And, it says, performance. They ask you to do calculate the percentage of funding spent on contract security, three categories: contract security, facility hardening, and training and awareness. I spoke to a school today, and they're looking for money so that 100% of their money will go for facility hardening. It's fine. There's you're not marked up or down because of that. As I just alluded to, you have, as first timers, you get on top of your 15, your 40, an automatically additional 15, 55. Oh, that's good. And then also, I told you that you're all ideology or religious or spiritual based. Well, you get a triple word score. You get your score tripled. So you have a really good chance, if you go through all of this, of getting a grant. Underserved communities, I've mapped their map. What they want to do is, it basically, they're using they're using national data on poverty areas, more or less. And New York, census tracts are usually fairly diverse. So I'm finding very few areas. There are some areas in the Bronx. I don't know, given what's happening in Brooklyn these days, whether Brooklyn, anywhere in Brooklyn is still a underserved neighborhood because of gentrification. But, you can get another 10 or 15 points there. Don't even go into the calculations on, what you could really score. They ask you if you have ever received it. Your answer is no. And I promised more information, how to contact DHSES, how to contact Grants Gateway. Here's where you get the applications, and you can email me at CSI_questions@JCRC.NY.
A question about letters of support from your local politician. Does it help?
They like to think that it helps. In reality, don't waste your time. You're going to have enough to do here. You want to get work on getting a 40. Would it, in the prioritization, would you be, the fifth person or the sixth person getting a 37? It might enter in there, but, not really. But it couldn't wait.
So as we talked about, we'll make this recording link available, and the presentation is available on David's website. I would ask, I know it's 6:20, so we want to let people go have dinner, but if you could very quickly just give us an evaluation of this training. It's so important to help us improve our trainings, but also it's important for us to keep these trainings free, because the feedback is very important, good or bad, but just the quality of the feedback is very important. So thank you all again. If I could just, it will take 1 minute to fill out this poll. Can you see the poll on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And while you're filling out the poll, if there are any questions for David.
Where is your website? Where's the link for that, or the web address?
It's right here, jcrcny.org/security grants.
I'll put it in the,
That's
I'll
your
put,
website.
I'll
Oh.
put it in the chat again.
Okay, I was looking for a personalized name. I'm sorry. That's fine.
I have a question. My church has received a number of threats from individuals, like death threats and stuff, to our staff, but they aren't necessarily related to like a particular ideology or extremist group. So I don't know. I'm not sure how to if that is something that we should include in our application, or if we should just mention like general kind of specific threats to our staff.
Okay, so what's important, Jason, is the threat has to be to the institution or an identifiable person in the institution, not just, if a random member gets has gotten a threat, that's less important. I don't say it's unimportant, but it's less important.
And it's another quick question. So if when making reports to the police, should the institution be making those police reports, or should the staff member who was threatened make that report?
I would, you can, in e-grants, you can attach anything and it will affect the judges look at everything that you uploaded in e-grants. And, if you have an insurance report, a police report, newspaper clippings, go ahead, upload it. What I like to do, just to make it easier for people, take like PowerPoint and put these things on different pages in a PowerPoint and just upload the PowerPoint. And say, just say threats received by such and such institution. Anything else?
Thank you so much, David. Wow. We might have to have you give it again in the next week. This is just so valuable for anyone who's submitting this grant. I feel like this is a win. How could you lose after this presentation?
Well, usually the people who lose did not read or follow instructions.
Again, thank you, Mr. Pollock and Lucy, for a great demonstration, a great seminar, and looking forward to getting more information and more advice from you guys regarding securing our church.
Well, thank you. I'm glad Brooklyn's in the house.
Thanks, Jared.
All right.
All the best. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.